The movie begins with Ella walking gallantly through the streets all the way to her office. She's a tailor and works in a fashion home. She's fixing a dress when Max, her superior, walks up to her, and they exchange pleasantries. While they converse, Annie, their boss, walks towards them. She complains that Fashion Week is fast approaching, and they are yet to meet all their targets. Max informs her of the progress they've made so far, and it calms her down. Annie notices a dress that is hung on a mannequin. She wants to know who made the dress, and Ella informs her she made it. When Ella informs her that she made the dress, she doesn't know what to expect from Annie. This is the first time Annie would be meeting Ella. She explains that she ran into trouble while making the dress and had to improvise. Annie is impressed and smiles, expressing likeness for the dress, and this brightens Ella's countenance. She notices Ella's outfit and wants to know which designer Ella is wearing. With a proud look, she confirms she made her outfit herself. Annie agrees she's a designer as Max confirms it and praises her. Ella confesses how she feels good about Annie's compliments. Max explains how he met her working somewhere and instantly decided to employ her. Annie praises Max's ability to identify people with skills just as he did with herself. It's evening and Ella is home. She talks to Katie, her friend and roommate, about how she had an interesting conversation with Annie. Katie works for the Look magazine. The meeting with Annie has inspired her to devote more time to work. Katie feels it makes no difference as she has already devoted all her time to working. She complains of her brother and mother's attitude towards her. She feels they only pretend to believe in her anytime she talks about her progress at work. She wants to be believed without pretense, as that can give her the boost she needs. While she hangs pictures of Candace Huffine, a model, on her wall, she says that this act will give her all the inspiration she needs. Ella talks about how choking the coming week would be for her. Katie mentions that she's expecting some sewing gigs next week and a photo shoot at her workplace. Katie complains about Claudia, her boss. Ella thinks Claudia's status as a fashion legend is what makes her act like a perfectionist, but Katie thinks Claudia does way too much. Katie talks about how cumbersome their upcoming project is and says she really needs her help. Ella can't resist Katie's pressure, and she agrees to help. Derek is seen at the front of a line in a coffee shop. He's making a call, and this makes him stall his order. This makes Ella, who stands behind him, a bit agitated. He continues to make the call when Ella reminds him to place his order. He does and goes back to making the call. Ella is still surprised at Derek's attitude. They have a little not-so-friendly chat as he thinks Ella is judgmental towards him. He gets his order and leaves, after which Ella goes to place her order. Derek is outside finishing up a phone call when he sees Ella walking towards him. As Ella gets close to him, he falls in line to Ella's steps and asks if she is following him. Ella thinks it's the other way round, but Derek continues to tease her as they walk. As Ella proceeds to enter a building, Derek quickly rushes to open the door for her. Ella guesses that Derek is going to the 10th floor. He agrees and also says he just started working for the Look magazine. Ella says it's Katie who works there, and she's just there to help her. Derek thinks fate is the reason for their meeting, but Ella isn't interested in his line of thought. Derek confesses he enjoyed their conversation, while Ella advises him to avoid Claudia as she could be a bone in his neck. Ella and Katie are discussing how far Claudia has gone for their upcoming photoshoot when Claudia and Lisa start approaching. Ella is in awe of Claudia as she thinks Claudia has a high fashion sense. Katie tells Ella that Lisa is a difficult person, but Ella thinks Lisa is pretty and wonders why Katie never talked about her. Lisa wants to know why Katie isn't in the closet, so Katie says she's heading there. Lisa makes a mild snide remark and Kat walks away. Ella and Katie walk into the closet full of designer bags and clothes. Ella can't take her eyes and hands off the brands she's seeing. She wants to try an Armani shoe on, but Katie doesn't allow her. Derek walks through the hallway with poise and charisma, while members of staff scamper to take a look at him. He enters the conference room and meets Claudia. He mentions that they are losing advertisers, then tries to calm himself by mentioning it's a hard time for all print media. Claudia asks him what he wants to do as he's just been placed in charge. Their ensuing conversation is filled with tension. He thinks magazines aren't in vogue again, but Claudia thinks they are. Roger, Derek's father, walks in. He observes the tension and wants to quench it. Roger tells Derek that Claudia is a very important figure in the company. He mentions that Claudia would do everything to keep the company's content going. He highlights Derek's job as the publisher to ensure income. He mentions that Derek has saved 2 publications in the past. Derek explains that he won't be ousting the print magazine for the digital magazine, but will work on combining them. Roger reiterates that Derek speaks for him, and Claudia mentions she speaks for herself as she walks out. Back at the closet, Ella and Katie are selecting outfits for the shoot. Katie is grateful for the opportunity to work in such a closet. Ella complains that there's a lot of dresses, but none for a lady of her size. Katie takes her to go check the shoes as she remarks that they come in every size. Claudia and Lisa take Derek to the closet to show him the brands they work with. Ella and Katie overhears them talk. Katie begins telling Ella that Derek is the new publisher and that his family owns numerous magazines. Katie calls Derek the Prince of Publishing. Lisa calls Katie out and tells her what to do. Claudia informs Derek of the time they'd be doing some fittings on the models, after which Claudia and Lisa walk out of the room. Derek is busy chatting on his phone and replying to them absent-mindedly. He raises his head and cites Ella. Katie introduces herself and Ella to Derek. Ella wonders why Derek sounded like he was employed to a lowly post while they met earlier in the day. Derek appreciates the honesty from Ella as he feels people get intimidated by his name. But Ella doesn't think she'd be intimidated. As Ella says this, Katie tries to poke her to stop. Derek receives a text and excuses himself. Katie reminds Ella to tread carefully as Derek is her boss and shouldn't be offended. Ella agrees, but she thinks Derek comes off as entitled. Katie thinks he's very attractive, but Ella says she hasn't seen it that way. Katie tells her that Derek has noticed her. Ella doesn't think she'd want to have anything to do with the 7th most eligible bachelor in New York. The shoot begins. As Ella helps in fitting a model, she gives her opinion about the dress. Lisa isn't interested in hearing any opinion from her and tells them to focus on the fittings. Derek walks in with Claudia. Lisa tries to fill them in when Derek excuses himself to go talk with Ella. Claudia asks Derek a question about the dress Ella is working on, and Ella quickly chips in an answer relating her thoughts. After she does that, Derek mimes a word of thanks to her. Claudia wants to know if Ella is Derek's interpreter, and Derek agrees that Ella is. Claudia and Lisa walk away. Ella wonders how Derek doesn't understand some terms in the fashion world, but is in charge. She schools Derek a little, and Derek admits he needs to learn a lot. Ella is done for the day and is walking past the front desk when Derek meets up with her. Derek wants Ella to tutor him on fashion. Ella explains exactly what she does and states she's not just a seamstress, but also a designer. This makes Derek even more interested in her skill and talent. While they step out, Derek complains that Claudia uses his limited knowledge on fashions to subvert his authority. Ella jokes that she feels the same way Claudia feels about his authority. They joke about who is following who this time around. Derek wants to know if Ella would come around again. She mentions she'd be working there till the shoot is over. Derek is pleased and offers to have coffee with her in the morning. He's interested in learning from someone like Ella who has a passion for fashion. Derek knows Ella loves fashion because Ella hates the fact that Derek doesn't like it. Ella agrees even though she never saw them ending up so friendly. Ella is in her loft as she fits a dress on a customer who's having her engagement party and would be meeting her fiancé's parents for the first time. She appreciates Ella for making her look beautiful. Ella and Derek are now having coffee. Derek tells her his expectation for the lessons. Ella brings out her sketchbook and warns Derek not to consider making an opinion on her sketches. She says she's only using it to teach him, and Derek agrees. While she teaches her philosophy about fashion, Derek can't help but praise her sketches. Ella thinks that dresses should be affordable, so the price tag doesn't take away the joy from them. Derek complains that his dad doesn't want changes in the company, as he's kept the company the same as it was when his father's father owned it. Derek says Ella is a hard person to read and asks about Ella's thoughts at the moment. Ella mentions the disparity in their backgrounds. Ella remembers the time her late dad, who worked in a textile mill, would bring pieces of fabrics home, and she'll sew them together. Derek condoles with her, but receives a text. He says he has to go for a meeting with Oscar and leaves with her. They go back to work, where Derek introduces Ella to Oscar and mentions that Ella is his digital guy who's always by him when he needs to save a publication. Ella opines that most women can't afford the magazines and the clothes that the magazines are advertising. Ella wants to bring fashion to the masses. She says fashion has a bias against women with bigger sizes and thinks Derek can change that. Katie walks in to call Ella for the photo shoot. Ella thinks the photo shoot is a good way for Derek to learn, and she asks that Derek come with them. Umberto is the photographer, one of the best in the business. While he shoots, Claudia excuses herself, but tells Lisa to make sure Derek doesn't give opinions. At a break, Ella meets Umberto and praises his talent. Umberto sees the potential in Ella and does the same too. Moments later, Lisa interrupts the conversation and asks they continue with the photo shoot. Claudia comes back, and as Lisa tells her about the happenings while she was absent, Umberto seeks Ella's opinion. Ella thinks the necklace on the model isn't fit for the dress. Umberto agrees, but Claudia disagrees. Umberto's opinion stands, and this disgusts Claudia. Claudia is angry at Derek for allowing Ella to call the shot. She remarks to Lisa that Derek would regret his actions. After the shoot, Derek invites Ella to his office to discuss. As they talk, Lisa comes to call Derek for a quick glance at the photos with the art director. He tells Lisa to go on, and he'll join them as he's currently having a meeting with Ella. When Lisa leaves, Derek tells Ella he wants to hire her as his consultant. Ella thinks he has the staff to do that for him. Derek believes the staff members are loyal to Claudia, and they see him as an outsider. He wants someone who'd be free to air her mind, hence why he wants Ella. Ella doesn't want Derek to be her boss, so she suggests that she be paid by having her designs on the magazine, and Derek agrees. At home with Katie, Ella works on new designs that will represent her brand well. She tells Katie that she's focused on putting her brand out there. She doesn't care about Derek's status, as she feels Derek is far above her. She compliments herself and tells Katie how comfortable she is being curvy. She now confesses she likes Derek as a person, but can't figure out something about him. Derek is seen teaching kids how to play basketball. He does it with so much zeal and passion. Harry comes in and Derek tells him they should make the kids go into art so they can freely express themselves. At the office, Derek and Oscar are going through the magazine's cover design when Lisa walks in. She offers Derek dinner with her. Derek says he's engaged for the evening when Ella walks in, and this disgusts Lisa. The two ladies exchange pleasantries, and Lisa seeks to know where they're headed. Ella answers, and off they go. While they walk down the avenue, Ella begins tutoring Derek on fashion. Ella talks about body positivity. She thinks one is beautiful if the person feels beautiful. She enters the garment district and meets Max. Ella introduces the men, and she goes about showing Derek around and teaching him. Ella asks Derek to feel a piece of fabric, and as he does that, he brushes his hand gently over Ella's. There's a moment of emotional tension between them. Ella quells it and asks that they continue the tour. Derek is awestruck as she walks on. Ella takes him to a women's clothing store. She whispers to Derek that the saleswoman always tells her she doesn't belong there. Ella wants to give her a shock. She speaks her mind loudly so the saleswoman can hear her. Derek thinks Ella looks cuter when she gets mad. He asks if women always dress for themselves or they dress for others. Ella thinks every woman has a reason for dressing, but points out that she dresses for herself. She buttresses her point that beauty is about how one sees herself. They sit at a bench by the roadside and catch up. Derek wants to know what Ella sees when she looks at him. Ella sees someone who has money and wears designers. She also mentions that she sees the 7th most eligible bachelor in New York. Derek doesn't care about that though. Ella talks about the time she spent with her mom when she was a kid. She tells the story of how her mom would take her from store to store anytime they wanted to get some clothes. The mom told her they only do that because most of these stores didn't have clothes with her favorite color. She found out later that her mom only did that because these stores didn't have clothes for her size. While they walk down, a bicycle almost hits Ella and Derek quickly pulls her to himself to avoid an accident. They hold on to that position a little longer as Derek explains to her the severity of what almost happened. Ella is at her workplace, sewing when Annie and Max walks in. The conversation starts with Ella acknowledging she's a fan of Annie. Annie mentions she was a tailor before venturing into fashion designing. Max thinks the two women have a lot in common as they can both sew and design. He urges Ella to show Annie her sketchbook, and Ella excitedly does. Annie, after flipping through the first few pages, thinks Ella is better than how Max says it. Annie thinks Ella is ready for something big as she walks outside the office. Max advises her to always remain herself, even after she makes it big. At the Look magazine, Ella reveals to Derek that he told Max to urge Annie to buy an ad in the magazine. Derek thanks Ella, and they meet Lisa, who wants to share an idea with Derek. She tells Derek they could have a party that coincides with a fashion week. As she says this, she arranges Derek's shirt properly. Ella thinks it's a good idea and that it would help Derek ease the changes he's about to make. Ella tells Lisa the magazine doesn't include people of every size. Lisa thinks that's far-reaching. Lisa still wants to throw the party and Derek thanks her. Derek brings Oscar to one of his apartments. They talk about when the fashion week starts and the time they have to prepare. There's a framed picture of Derek and some young people. Derek says the picture was taken at his youth center in Brooklyn. He says that the youth center is his way of giving back. Ella and Katie walk into the Look when Katie approaches Lisa as Ella walks on. Derek meets Ella and tells her Annie has contacted them for an ad buy. Even as Lisa and Katie watch on, As they leave, Katie tells Lisa she'd love to apply for the vacant post of an assistant fashion editor and hopes Lisa could make Claudia read some samples of her work. Lisa thinks it's wrong timing for Katie to ask for favors as she and Claudia are very busy at the moment. At the closet, Katie tells Ella that Lisa shut her down. Ella promises to help out in any way she can, and she proceeds to talk to Derek on Katie's behalf. Ella approaches Derek and suggests that Katie write the article about her. Derek thinks otherwise, but Ella makes a case for her. Oscar concurs with Ella's assertion and states that it would be nice if someone who knows Ella writes the article. Derek is fine with it and excuses himself to attend a meeting with his dad. Roger is in the hallway telling Derek to halt his new plans for the magazine. Ella walks by and Derek introduces her to Roger. Roger advises him and leaves. As Ella would always do, she takes every chance to dissuade Derek that she likes him. This doesn't bother Derek, who asks Ella to dinner. Derek says it's a friendly dinner and not necessarily a work dinner, so Ella agrees. At dinner, Derek thanks Ella for suggesting that Annie buys an ad. He talks about his travel to Spain during his days of rebellion against his family. Ella talks of her plans of going to Spain as soon as her brand, Ella's Originals, takes off. Derek thinks Ella is a little defensive and apologizes if he comes off as arrogant. Derek mentions the things he did after returning from Spain. When he's done, he mentions the possibility that he's saying all these to impress Ella, but she thinks he's doing well in impressing her. Ella is home, and she argues with Katie that it wasn't a date, but just a friendly outing. Ella thinks she's just a novelty for Derek, who has been with models and rich ladies. She also wants to avoid flirting with him, so she doesn't lose the chance of getting her article published. Katie doesn't think she's been totally truthful. Ella confirms she actually likes him a lot, but she's scared of getting hurt. Ella takes Derek, Oscar, and a photographer to her loft, and they document her and her wares. Oscar and the photographer thinks her work is amazing. Ella points out to the pictures of Candace Huffine on the wall and mentions she's her muse. The photographer already wants to buy a piece off from Ella, and she agrees. Ella talks about her steps to greatness and mentions the possibility of having her own fashion room on Fashion Avenue or continue being a seamstress. Derek wants her to dream big as she has the talent for big things. Oscar thinks the loft will add juice to the story. Derek admits that Ella is the one doing him a favor with this article. He compliments her and tells her she's fantastic. While they walk out, Oscar wants to know if Derek and Ella have something going on. Derek isn't sure as he thinks Ella is a bit laid back about him. Oscar advises Derek to show her who he is, and he concurs. Derek takes Ella to his youth center. She watches on as Derek teaches the kids basketball. Ella comes up to help Derek teach a student a skill, and the kid does amazingly well. This impresses Derek. As the session with the kids ends, Derek now wants to challenge Ella, who agrees, and they go on to play. Moments later, Ella is massaging Derek's legs as he has hurt it. Ella mentions that Derek is a different person from who she thought he was. Derek hopes it's a good thing, and Ella confirms it. While they walk home, they talk about their upbringing and the kind of connections they had with their parents. Ella urges him to make more memories with his dad. While outside Ella's apartment, Derek advises her to focus on being a designer after she talks about her sewing gig for the next day. Ella says she'd consider that after the article comes out, but she's unsure if people would like her designs. Ella mentions that Derek has successfully entered her head, and Derek says he loves being there. They share a kiss for a moment, and Ella now thinks everything is going fast, but infers she is comfortable with it. They bid goodnight, and Ella goes inside. Ella is seen sketching a dress. She tells Katie she'd wear it to the party. When Katie mentions that Derek would love the dress, Ella tells her she's doing it for herself, as she'd be meeting with people of caliber there. She only wants to impress them. At the look, Katie is walking down the hallway with Oscar, discussing about the article she's writing. Lisa hears them and wants to know which article they're talking about, so Katie indulges her. Katie seeks to tell Claudia of the latest anomaly. Katie goes into Claudia's office and meets her, complaining about one of the pictures for the photo shoot. Katie tells her about Derek's plan to publish an article on Ella, her design, and her size. Claudia seeks to tell his father at once, as she wouldn't allow the company she's worked so hard for to get rubbished by Roger's son, because they take her input lightly. Derek is informing Ella and Oscar that he's having a meeting with Claudia and his father to discuss his new plans. Ella makes a case for body positivity and thinks it's not just a phrase. She thinks it's like a movement that can change lives. Ella urges him to do what's right. Now at the meeting, Derek tells them the need to broaden their vision so they can make more money. He is firm on starting the digital media and giving full-figured women attention in the magazine. Derek thinks the magazine already set a limitation for women, and that not every woman can read their magazine and get inspired. He says he isn't backing out on his plan and walks out of the office. He goes out to meet Ella and hugs her. While they maintain that position, Roger walks in and sees them. Roger thinks that the reason behind Derek's decision is flawed. He thinks Derek is ill-advised, and also thinks the advice stems from a moment of fling. Derek thinks if he's to fill in Roger's shoes, he has to do things his own way. Roger says he's taking too much risk that could be detrimental to the family's name and leaves the room. While Roger is about to enter the elevator, Ella meets him and makes a case for Derek. He acknowledges Ella's boldness and the points she has made and steps into the elevator. Ella is in Derek's house alongside Oscar. Derek is preparing a meal while they talk about Derek's plan to move to Brooklyn. Derek blows his trumpet on how good his cooking skill is. Moments later, Oscar is talking about how much he loves working in Derek's penthouse, away from Claudia and her people. Oscar reads the room and notices it's time for him to excuse the lovebirds. He tells them good night and leaves. Ella wants to hear Derek play the piano, and he goes over to do that. While he plays, Ella comes to sit by him and praises his abilities. She rests her head on Derek's shoulders as Derek plays on. Ella is home cutting the fabric for her dress when Katie tells her that she shouldn't overwork herself. At the look, Ella meets up with Lisa and asks her if she has seen Katie. She says she hasn't and goes on to try to rile Ella up her size. Katie is in the office with Derek and Oscar. She's telling of her progress on the article. Derek offers an insight. Oscar asks that he and Katie have lunch together, but Katie says she's busy as Lisa has given her a task. Oscar asks that they go to the party together and Katie is a bit excited about it. Derek wants them to bring advertisers to the party. Ella comes in and asks Derek that they go get lunch, but he's rushing off to a meeting already and Ella is cool with it. At home, Ella and Katie discuss Ella's thing with Derek, while Ella continues working on her dress. Katie thinks the dress is lovely and looks Cinderella-like. This reminds Ella of how she felt when she was a kid and how Cinderella never looked like her. She knows there are many girls feeling that way now, and she wants to change that. Katie goes to sleep while Ella continues working on her dress. Claudia and Lisa are going over the party plans as Lisa fills her in. Claudia doesn't want Ella to get an invite, and she makes sure Lisa excludes her name from the party. This excites Lisa as she concurs. She meets Ella and tells her she couldn't make the list of invitees as they had to make room for the VIPs. Ella says she understands and walks off. Katie is telling Oscar about the recent development. Oscar agrees that Ella is the most important person in the course and thinks she should be there. Ella doesn't want Derek to know, but Oscar tells Katie she'll talk to Derek. Derek meets Lisa in the hallway and tells her to put Ella's name back. Lisa mentions it was Claudia's idea, and she couldn't go against it as Claudia is her boss. Derek pulls rank as he mentions he's Claudia's boss. Lisa agrees to it and walks off. Ella is finishing her dress when Derek calls her to tell her that her name has been added back to the list. He says it's a signal problem. Ella is thankful, but wants Derek to say more. Derek tells her that the party won't be complete without her in it, and this excites Ella. Katie walks in and hands over a timeless piece to Ella as part of her accessories for the evening. Ella appreciates it, and she goes on to prepare for the party. The party starts, and there are paparazzi everywhere. Claudia pulls Derek from Oscar and Katie's conversation so he can take some photos with Jasmine and the other models. In a moment, Derek leaves them for an interview. While he goes ahead greeting guests, Ella enters the hall and Derek excuses himself to go meet her. Derek is astonished by Ella's beauty. Claudia, who's standing in a corner, looks at Ella with disdain. In a moment, Annie meets Ella and compliments her dress. Annie mentions to Derek that she's a big fan of Ella's work. Derek tells her that Ella would feature in the magazine, and this impresses Annie, who offers to help. While Derek goes to get drinks, Jasmine walks up to him and starts a conversation. She poses for a picture with Derek, after which she excuses herself. Derek walks to Ella when Oscar reveals that 2 more designers have approached him, and they like the plus-size aspect. Oscar and Katie go dancing. Derek then asks Ella for a dance. As they dance, Lisa and Claudia can't seem to take their gaze off them. As they whisper sweet words into each other's ears, Claudia and Lisa are making plans to spoil Ella's evening and sabotage Derek's new innovation. While still dancing, Ella's shoe has a fault, and she goes into the restroom to fix it. Lisa meets Ella there in the restroom and compliments Ella's dress. She says she wants to be friends with Ella and feels they can both achieve a lot together. Lisa lies that Derek didn't want Ella to attend the party because his supposed feelings for her aren't true. She says Derek only wanted to score points and sell advertising space in the magazine. She mentions that the dance was only a show on Derek's part. She tells Ella that Derek is only using her, and then she leaves the room. Before Derek goes up to give his speech, Roger praises him for pulling his idea off. He goes on to the podium and thanks everyone. He continues by telling them the opportunity this new direction has to offer. He goes on to talk about how body positivity should be encouraged. He also talks about how important the print media is. He mentions they've sold all their advertising space too. Ella, who just walked in, hears this and walks out. Derek goes on to acknowledge Ella as the inspiration behind it and calls her up, but she is nowhere to be found. He tries to go look for her when Claudia holds him and reminds the audience not to forget how important print magazines are. At home, Ella is sewing as she ignores Derek's call. Katie comes in and tells her to continue doing her job and focus on reaching the heights she wants to reach. Ella goes to the office and meets Derek, Oscar, and Katie. Oscar and Katie excuses them. Ella explains that she felt that Derek is using her, hence why she left the party. She says she hasn't been very honest with herself. She knows she cares about Derek a lot, and it seems she's running away from that fact. She continues by saying she's not in the same league with Derek, and he quickly disagrees. She now wants to know exactly what she means to him. Derek goes to her and holds her hands. He affirms his love and reassures her that his feelings are genuine. Derek asks Ella to come with him as he has a surprise for her. While they walk down, they meet Roger on the way. Roger tells Derek he has passed a vote of confidence on him at the board meeting. They hug and Derek excuses Roger as he walks on with Ella. Derek takes Ella to go meet Max and Annie. Annie appreciates Ella's talent and tells her she's expanding her company and would be needing a designer for full-figured women. She thinks Ella can do the job and offers it to her. Annie wants them to begin her photo shoot immediately. Umberto enters with a camera, and this surprises Ella. Umberto goes on to appreciate the opportunity to do a photo shoot with Candace Huffine. Seeing Candace makes Ella so excited as Candace would be modeling for Ella's originals. Ella thanks Candace for being an inspiration to her, and then the photo shoot begins. Claudia and Lisa are watching from a corner, and Claudia admits it wouldn't be fair for her to oppose an idea that is profitable. As Derek and Ella hug, Derek tells her how much he believes in her. They share a kiss, after which Candace calls on Ella to join her. Everyone is excited to be a part of this, even Claudia and Lisa.